3.
Hello! Welcome to GMAT Tuesdays. I'm Kevin here from Magoosh, and today we're going over a foundational skill in math. We're dealing with fractions, and we're going to talk about adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing fractions, and that's going to lead us into a discussion about proportions, somewhere where some students get tripped up and make some errors. This might be a little too basic for some people out there, but these foundational skills are always important to review. So first, what I want to do is just go over how do we add fractions, subtract fractions, multiply and divide, and then we'll do proportions. So adding fractions is not too hard. The only thing that you have to remember is that we need to have the same number on the bottom of our fraction to add them together. To do this, usually one quick way to do it is just multiply these two numbers together. 3 times 5 is 15. Sometimes you can find a common factor of these two numbers so you don't have to multiply them together. So with this, we'd end up multiplying both sides by the other number. So here we're going to multiply by 3, and here, don't have a lot of space, we're going to multiply by 5. So then we go 5 times 2 is 10, and 5 times 3 is 15. And now we're adding 4 times 3 is 12, and 5 times 3 is 15. So now we just add the top numbers. We're only adding the top numbers. So then we end up with 22 over 15 as our final answer. With subtraction, it's the same process. We need to get a common denominator for our fractions to subtract them. Here we have the same bottom number. Take a knee here, make this easier. So we're going to end up with 15 on the bottom here. And so 3 times 4, let me rewrite this for you guys. And actually, 5. And so 3 times 5 is 15, 3 times 4 is 12. And then 3 times 5 is 15, 1 times 5 is 5. So then 12 minus 5 is 7, and we have the 15 on the bottom. So with addition and subtraction, remember, we need to have the same numbers on the bottom, and they don't change when you add and subtract. They're staying the same. Multiplication and division is actually just a little bit easier, at least I think so. We're just multiplying across the top and multiplying across the bottom. So really it looks like this. So 2/3 times 3/4 is really 2 times 3 on top and 3 times 4 on the bottom. We end up with 6 times 12, and that leads to 1/2. We can reduce that to 1/2. Division is pretty straightforward, except we don't divide fractions. We just don't do it. Anytime you see division in fractions, you should think, oh, we don't divide fractions, we multiply them. And so when you have a division problem, all that you need to do is flip your fraction. You're going to multiply it by the reciprocal, is what it's called, but you don't need to know the fancy words. All that you need to know is you need to take one of your fractions and flip it over. So then we end up with 4 times 8 is 32, and 7 times 3 is 21. And that's our answer. Great. So now, hopefully this is something that you remember. Maybe it's a little rusty, but it's starting to become stronger. One thing that's important to remember is when you deal with proportions, you don't want to confuse them with the operations for fractions. So remember, a proportion is just a comparison between two things. In this case, we're comparing fractions here. And with proportions, what we can do is reduce our fractions to make it easier to solve them. With normal fractions, we can reduce the denominator and the numerator. So, for example, we did that here, and we could have actually done it earlier in this problem as well. Since we have these numbers on top and these numbers on bottom, we can start to cancel them out. So, we can cancel these 3's. 2 goes into 4 once, and 2 goes in 4 twice, leaving a 1 on top, and so that actually would lead us straight to 1/2 a little bit quicker. So what that means is when you have a proportion, you can reduce the A and the B, or the C and the D. Another place that you can reduce is along the top. So A and C and B and D. So numerator and numerator, denominator and denominator. That is it. The only reduction that you can do. Some students want to reduce across. And that would mean reducing from here to here or here to here. But because we have an equal sign here, this is not possible. They're thinking maybe about the operation of multiplication with their fractions and wanting to reduce across. But with that equal sign in the middle, we can't do it. We don't want to do it. Just a quick review of how to reduce and solve. So remember we said we can reduce this way and this way. No options here, but if I look at the 35 and the 14, I know 7 goes into both of them. So I can reduce these by 7. So that becomes x over 5, and then 11 over 2, if you take a 7 out of both. And then finally, all that I have to do here to solve is multiply both sides by 5, or I like to do 5 over 1 since we're dealing with fractions. Makes it a little bit simpler for me to understand. And then we end up with 55 over 2. Excellent. So the takeaway here is don't confuse your fraction operations with proportions. You got to do things a little bit differently. All right. I hope you had a fun time learning about these fractions. Thank you for taking the time to watch the video. If you have any more questions, come on over to Magoosh. We have lots of answers for you and all kinds of materials to get you ready for the GMAT. So I'll be here every Tuesday. Be excellent to the universe, and I'll see you soon.